Hello, welcome to Flip's presentation on tips for finding off-campus housing. My name is Ayush Pandit, I'm a junior, and I'm an incoming co-president of Flip. I've also lived off campus a couple times, so hopefully I'll be able to share some of the tips and tricks that I've picked up.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess Dominic. I use she, they pronouns. I'm going to be a junior this upcoming year. I'm also going to be one of Flip's co-presidents for the year, and I'm currently living off campus in a house with roommates. So I think I have some wisdom that I can share to the audience about how to find off-campus housing. So thank you for joining us today on this lovely day, no matter what time it is at the moment you are viewing this. We're looking forward to this conversation. So let's begin. Okay, first, as a disclaimer, we're students. We are talking about our own personal experiences, how we've done this, what works for us, what has worked in the past, using our knowledge that we've gained personally. So we're not experts by any means. What we say here today is not going to for sure guarantee you housing. Take everything we say with a grain of salt and use your best judgment. And yeah.
So what are the actual steps to finding a house, a habitable environment? Well, you got your step 0, which is figure out all of the basics that actually go into, even beginning the search. So this is things like the price range, what location you're looking for, what are your essentials? What are the things that you must have in a place that you're going to live, accessibility concerns, and your personal flexibility with all of these. These are all things that everyone really has different preferences around, and these are things to kind of tie down and figure out before you really, commit yourself to the process of finding some place to live. The next step is browsing through websites and finding options. So now that you actually have a baseline for what your standards are, you have some sort of bar that is not the floor, hopefully. You can kind of go through these different websites, these different options, and try and figure out, is it realistic? Am I going to have to go back and change some of the things that I'd assumed about my price range, location, et cetera, et cetera? Or, is this a reasonable fit? Along with that, the next thing you want to do is you want to start reaching out to these places and really, with the quarter fast approaching and, deadlines for decisions coming up, you really want to reach out to as many places as possible via all 3 options. So email, text, and phone calls. And phone calls, I'd like to say, are the ultimate power move. Really just call them out, literally. Well, not literally, but, call them, give them a shot. The next step is negotiate. Now, honestly, a lot of the time you won't really have that many opportunities to negotiate, exceptions being platforms such as Airbnb, Vrbo, where maybe you can talk directly to an owner and you're not necessarily signing a lease. If you are signing a lease, though, typically most of the time those terms really aren't up for negotiation, but it's worth asking what you can get. And finally, secure the roof. You figured out a spot. Now you just got to sign the lease. You got to figure out all those details and actually move in and figure out how to live, which we will not be covering that much in this presentation. That's on you.
So first of all, step 0, figure out your preferences. So this entails like questions that you ask yourself. For example, where do you want to live? Are you sure you want to live there? How much money do you have? That's important. And how flexible is your budget? Do you have roommates? Do you need any roommates? How many roommates do you need? A side plug to check out Flip's roommate spreadsheet that we will be linking in the emails in the resource document sent out with this video. It's a spreadsheet where you can find roommates that want to live in the same areas that you do, so you can reach out to them and connect. When you find a roommate, does everyone have the same preferences? Are you willing to live with people you don't know? When do people go to bed? When do they wake up? Are you gonna cook dinner together? What else do you need? Think about other accessories, furniture, utilities, Wi-Fi. In these upcoming quarters, a lot of things are gonna be remote, online. So ensuring that you have stable access to internet. Also, transportation. Do you have a car? Is there parking available? How many parking spots will you need for your household? Is it close to public transportation? Do you need access to public transportation? How much can you commute for needs, such as groceries? Where's the nearest grocery store? What is your personal level of flexibility? This kind of relates to comfort versus cost. What are you most comfortable with? What are you willing to give up for the sake of having a certain place to live in a certain place in a certain area? Asking yourself these questions can give you more insight into where you should move to, who you should move with, and just figure out the situation a little bit more.
So yeah, going into step one then, okay, so you have a list of preferences, you have things that you've kind of figured out your baseline for what you're looking for. So where do you actually go? Well, here we basically have a list of a bunch of different websites that you can use. And we'll also be sending out more information in a follow-up notes document that will accompany this presentation. That will also have some additional links to this, but some starter options include things like Craigslist, which honestly is kind of sketch. Maybe don't start off using Craigslist, Airbnb, apartments.com, sublet.com, rent.com, Zumber.com, Facebook Marketplace, SU postings for rent, and plenty more. Competitors to all of these things exist. There are hundreds of options to choose from. An important distinction to note here are, and that we'll cover a little bit later, are some of these websites are looking for places that are places where there's explicit rentals listed. So these are places that you'd actually have a direct lease, whereas other websites on this list are more informal, where you wouldn't necessarily have a direct lease, something like Airbnb, for example, or subletting from someone else. You would be on someone else's lease, or there'd be some sort of separate contract or agreement designating your ability to live there. Other options. So for the less conventional approaches, but things that can still work, you can also go to alumni. This might feel a little weird, but certainly if you're aware of any, if you have any networks in different places, or if you're aware of alumni in the areas that you're looking to live, just reaching out to them and seeing if they have any idea where they can find housing, or if they have any buddies who are looking for a spare, or who have a spare bedroom that they could sublet. That sort of thing can also lead to finding housing, and it can also potentially be a really great deal. Reaching out to your personal networks beyond just alumni, friends at other colleges, friends who aren't using university housing. This is going to be especially key for a lot of universities that are moving to completely online. There's a lot of people who are deciding to not, stay in their university housing, but they've already signed a lease, so they're looking to sublet that housing. And that might be a great opportunity for you to get a good deal on some stable housing. And also, of course, if you have friends who are, let's say socioeconomically privileged, you might certainly consider them as a resource, at least in terms of, if not, helping you find housing, trying to figure out places, or, maybe even just, as a roommate who can afford, certain options that you might not be able to on your own.
So along with this step one of reaching out and finding your options, we want to talk a little bit about what are the ethical implications of renting or using something like Airbnb. So the TLDR of this whole thing is that Airbnb can be unethical. It can and has negatively impacted many communities across the country, across the world. Renting can be really, really complicated, especially Airbnb, but also just in normal renting. You kind of have to ask yourself, will I be gentrifying this neighborhood by coming in and using the resources that I've been given from Stanford to take up low-income housing units from other people from the community? Is the company I'm using to rent from contributing to gentrification in the area? In the end, you have to just do what you're comfortable with, knowing your responsibility, knowing your impact that you will have and what is best for your situation, given all these ethical implications. And we've linked some resources to information about why Airbnb has been harmful. Give them a read if you wanna learn more. But yeah, just ask yourself how you will be impacting the communities that you're moving in with.
So another topic that we want to cover is stranger danger. And ooh, that animation did not look nice over Zoom, but stranger danger. And what we really want to say here is be safe. In this process of finding housing, hopefully less so now that everything continues to be virtual in this ongoing quarantine and this ongoing pandemic. But still, finding housing can be a sketchy process, especially if you're not directly getting onto a lease, but you're subletting from someone, or you're maybe more informally staying with someone else. It can, be a little sketch. And ultimately, the best advice that we recommend is trust your instincts, trust your gut. Not just in the sense of physical safety from whoever you're leasing or renting from, but also for the safety of the home environment that you're going to be staying in. You know, safety is really important, whether that be physical safety or, you know, just mental safety, or, you know, just safety of this area that you're going to be in. And, you know, if you can, trying to physically see a place, or at least get a guided tour, a virtual tour of the place, is really important. Definitely call them. You know, never sign a lease or never agree to live anywhere if you haven't actually at least talked to them on the phone. Hopefully you've been able to get a tour, a video tour at least, of the area that you're going to be living in, of like specifically the home, and make sure that it lives up to the standards that you need. Research the surrounding area, and really try and get you know, a grasp on, like, you know, things like, okay, is public transportation accessible? You know, is this a safe area? Like, are there things I should be considerate of moving to this area? For in terms of, again, the landlord, do not trust them if they only want cash or a money transfer. Typically, that's going to be something that's a little more sketch. Most of the time, if you're renting from someone, they'll have multiple payment options, or at least different things that they'll accept, especially if they're using a separate platform, something like Airbnb, or if they're, you know, formally renting and they're having you sign a lease, they'll definitely have some sort of other option for paying rent. Never sign a lease, again, I'll repeat this just because it's so important. Never sign a lease that you've never actually spoken to the landlord of, and never sign it if you haven't read the lease carefully. Make sure that you actually even have a lease, or, you know, just some sort of document that is legally binding and on paper that confirms your ability to live in a place. You know, the last thing you want to have is, you know, some situation comes up in the middle of the quarter and, you know, you suddenly find yourself without housing. So it's really crucial to have some sort of, like, you know, legal documentation that can hopefully protect some of your rights as a renter or subleaser. And really, you know, look into the state's rules on deposits and how much they're legally allowed to ask for. You know, not to say all landlords, but I think we've all had stories of plenty of landlords who have done things that are maybe less than ethical. And it's important to, you know, be on your toes when looking at that sort of stuff to make sure that you're not getting scammed, you're not getting ripped off, or, you know, ultimately that the landlord or whoever you're, you know, staying with is respecting your rights.
Personally, I have a couple other points that I would like to add about being safe. Both the houses that I've lived in previously have been found on Craigslist, which we have said can be a little sketchy. We went through many different places, many different listings that we thought maybe weren't the safest, maybe weren't the best in terms of trusting our money with someone, or maybe they were a fake listing. So you really have to use your best judgment, trust your gut. There are legitimate places on sites like Craigslist. You just have to really be safe. So now that we're done with step one, that was kind of a long step, but step two is reaching out. So you can email or text or call. Calling is really a power move, as Ayesha said previously, if they give that contact information out. Some questions that you should probably ask before signing a contract is, how many bedrooms are there? How many bathrooms? Will that be enough for your household and your roommate? Are utilities included? Which ones? Water, garbage, electricity, all that kind of stuff. When do you have to take the garbage cans out, for example? What maintenance are you responsible for? So whether that be watering a lawn, or, you know, other duties around the house. Are there insurance policies such as rental insurance or anything like that? Timelines. So some places have a minimum lease requirement. That was also something that we found in our search on Craigslist, was many places advertise a 12-month lease. For Stanford students, particularly finding housing for these weird quarters, that could be difficult. Signing a year lease for us college students is kind of a big commitment. Oftentimes this is just a city ordinance to have the first offer be a 12-month lease, and sometimes you're able to negotiate that down, so it's less, month by month or in 3-month spans, etc. And feel free to take this template for an email and use it on your own. Fill in the blanks for listings and names and stuff like that. This can be used as an email to send out to possible matches for landlords.
So now, negotiate. Now, again, depending on the specifics of your lease, this may or may not be an option, but as you know, my favorite Green Goblin once said, do or do not, there is no try. Shout out my homeboy Yoda. Um, if you don't ask, you won't know. So just make sure to ask, ask those questions about what's included with the lease. Ask about things like credit requirements, whether there's credit checks required. Will you need a cosign? Is there a separate application process? Are you going to have to go through a background check? Does that cost money? And try and see if there's any opportunities for you to, potentially get a better deal. So this would typically happen if you're subletting rather than if you're leasing directly from a management company or from a landlord. But at the same time, you want to be equipped with the best possible information when it comes to, the application process, the rights that you have, and the deal that you're getting. If you're subleasing, there's definitely there's more wiggle room there. So, ask about things like specific timelines, how flexible is the person that you're subleasing from with price, if at all, and try to get written and specific answers for things like maintenance policies, utilities, furnishings, etc. Because those rights are potentially less likely to be respected if you're subleasing versus on a lease directly. At the end of the day, it is what it is. The bourgeoisie controls a lot, and you don't have a ton of power always. But try your best, and definitely make sure to be well aware of the rights that you do have under law as a renter or a subleaser.
Speaking of like co-signing and leasing and all that kind of stuff, what does co-signing even mean? So co-signing is when someone else who has better credit can vouch for you if you don't have credit or if your credit is bad. So this means that their credit is on the line as opposed to yours in the event that something goes wrong. That is why landlords and rental agencies and everything like that tend to ask for credit so they can ensure that you are able to pay your rent on time, that they have some sort of way of holding you accountable if you do damages to the property, all that kind of stuff. You can typically ask a parent, family friend, or any real adult person who is like financially secure in your life that you trust and that trust you to co-sign. This is a relationship that kind of has to be healthy because they're trusting you as well to not mess up their credit because their credit's on the line with your responsibility to the house. And they're also responsible for the damages. And if you don't pay rent, for example. So what happens if you don't have credit? I don't have credit. I need credit. I'm gonna order a credit card soon because credit's really important. You should probably try to sublease if you don't have credit because that it's less of an issue when subleasing. It's less official. It's just, yeah, subleasing can be a little easier in that sense. Another question to ask is, does a roommate or a person that you're living with have credit? Do they know anyone who has credit? You can have them be the primary renter. So that's the person who signs the lease, who talks with the landlord or management company. And besides that, there unfortunately isn't really a way to get around credit checks. Try explaining your situation if the person seems receptive. I know we did that a couple times for when we reached out on Craigslist to people, asking them, hey, like, we're college students, we got evicted from campus, we don't really have a place to live. Is there any way that you can look past the credit requirement and give us a chance, basically? So that's kind of some more information about credit that's kind of important because it's very prominent when you go to search for housing. Oops. There we go.
Yep. So now you got all of that out of the way. The last step, and hopefully one of the best steps, is when you actually secure the roof. So again, just double checking everything, making sure that you got everything in order and that you're ready to sign the lease, paying the deposit, first month's rent, et cetera, et cetera. And we have more information that we can also link in a follow-up document about how you might potentially be able to get an advance from the financial aid office in order to do some of these things. Again, information will be linked in that follow-up document. Long story short, you just got to contact them and work that situation out individually based on your specific financial aid. But yeah, try and set up auto pay if possible. You know, the last thing you want to do is be late on rent. That would just be a major L. And you know, hopefully you'd be able to avoid it. I guess like another consideration there is when you move in, take pictures of everything. So for example, you know, if you paid a deposit, they can use that in the future if you did any damage to the house, or if you're really bad, you know, they can do more. Taking photos ensures that you know you can't get framed for any damage that was already there when you moved in, and this is something to be you know really take note of. Hopefully, more scrupulous renters you know will take this into account and also you know be considerate. But you know you never know you know what situation you're going to walk into. Next, if you break something, try and replace it. If it's something that's not so replaceable, definitely let the landlord know ahead of time. For example, if there's like a smaller piece of furniture, maybe there's plates or something, maybe in an Airbnb, you break it, you might be able to get by, you know, just replacing it. But there's like a hole in the wall, that might be a situation that would be a little outside of what you're capable of doing, depending on how big the hole is, and you know, depending on your skills as a carpenter. But who knows? And finally, make sure that you keep good track of who owes what. You know, honestly, down to the dollar, especially if you're living with others. This is crucial to budgeting, and this is crucial to also getting a good sense of exactly how much you know the costs of renting that specific place are, and that can really be critical to like guaranteeing that you know you'll actually be able to afford living there, even if you can afford the rent that's listed, for example, in the original listing that you signed.
So your next step, dot, dot, dot. Unfortunately, finding and securing a house is only the first part. And even then, it's very difficult. It can be a long process. It can be very stressful. But after that, once you finally secure that roof, then you have to learn how to live with your roommates if you have them. So like, what are your living styles? Do you only come out at night? Do your roommates, did they make loud noises during the day? Communal versus more individual living styles. Are they clean or messy? Splitting responsibilities. So who's going to do the chores? Who's going to cook? Who's going to clean? Who's going to take out the trash? Who's going to move the trash bins to the road? And if you forget, what are you going to do with all that trash? I know this from personal experience. Boundary setting. So are you going to have guests over? We live in a global pandemic. You should talk about those kind of ground rules. And also conflict resolution. So communication is key with your roommates, especially in the world that we live in, where there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening. So make sure you are communicating with your roommates. Have a group chat. And living on your own, please make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Living on your own, especially if it's your first time, can be very difficult. It can be very easy to get caught up in the course load that you may be taking or the job that you may be working, and you forget to take care of yourself. For example, feeding yourself, having 3 meals a day, drinking water, taking care of your mental health, reaching out to people, talking to them. Those are all really important parts of finding housing as well. For like some personal examples of kind of what I mentioned before about living with your roommates. So like me and my roommates, we all cook dinner together. Like we all do like group planning for the week, and then we have a grocery list, and then we split all the costs of groceries at the end of the week when we go shopping. That's kind of how we do it. So find a model that works for you and your roommate, and that'll maximize your comfort. It's nice being friends with your roommates as well. So try to work on that if you can too.
So yeah, that's pretty much it for this presentation. Thanks y'all for staying tuned. If you have any further questions, as always, feel free to reach out to either of us. Feel free to reach out to me. I go by the Young Yush on my Spotify. Check me out on Insta, Moonshot18. Feel free to reach out to either of us, like I said, with our more official, links, our email addresses. All this information, once again, will be in that document that we'll be sending out in accompaniment with this video.
Yes, that will be sent out along with the roommate matching spreadsheet that we're releasing, and also a survey that you can take. It's just an anonymous 1-question survey. If you have any more questions that you want to share, or if you have any suggestions for programming that you would like to see from Flip, please fill out the survey. We really want to know how we can best support the community at this time, and how we can best answer your questions. questions that we will also be adding to the Q&A at the end of our resource document. So we'll try to find the answers for you if we're able to. So thank you all for joining us on this day, whatever time it is, wherever you are. It was great. It's great talking. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're taking care of yourself, and reach out, as Ayush said, anytime with any questions.
All right. See y'all.